Gormaga Tara, Gormaga Gwiv. I'm Dermot Looney, I'm a councillor in South Dublin County Council. Like Keane, I was Mayor. Keane was the Mayor of Fingal. I was Mayor in South Dublin. Again, if you don't know the name of the Lord Mayor of Dublin City, you won't know the name of the Mayor of Fingal or South Dublin, I can tell you. Never mind the Cahirlock of Dunleary, Rathdown County Council. Can I just welcome Councillor Paul Mulville as well, who's here as well from Fingal, and thanks Paul for coming along. I am due to talk about participatory budgeting, and I will talk about it in a moment, but I just want to, if it's okay, make some general points about democratising Dublin and the theme that we have here today. I want to start with a quote from the late great Tony Benn, and I think of Owen Keegan, who I did meet once and seemed like a nice man, but how utterly unaccountable and undemocratic it is to have a chief executive who can go mouthing off like he did the other day. And so Tony Benn used to say this: if you meet a powerful person, ask them 5 questions. What power have you got? Where did you get it from? In whose interests do you exercise it? To whom are you accountable? And I think the most important one of all, how can we get rid of you? Now, when we talk about councillors, TDs and so on, as bad a political and elected system as we might have, we can get rid of those. But we certainly can't get rid of the real people who have power in Dublin at the moment. If we go back 50 years ago, the most powerful person in Dublin was Archbishop McQuaid, and we couldn't get rid of him either. In a democratic Dublin, would we have, so in our imaginary democratic Dublin, would we have a homeless crisis? Would we have a housing crisis? Would we have the kind of transport chaos that people have spoken about? Would we have the kind of disjointed thinking between the 4 councils and the so many different quangos that are out there? Would we have pool bag happening? I don't think we would. Would we have the privatisation of bins despite the objections of the local representatives? No, we wouldn't have had. Would we have the kind of disaffected communities that we do have? Would we have, as Anne-Marie spoke about, the supposed end of the dual mandate never happening? And that's the idea that TDs and senators are doing so much local work on the ground. To be honest with you, if I was in dire need of something that my council should be providing for me as a citizen, I would probably go to my TD or senator rather than my part-time county councillor who might not be able to get it done for me. So I think when we talk about democratising Dublin, we are talking mainly here today about local government reform, but of course that's not all that we need to do. We need to democratise our workplaces, we need to democratise our centres of education, we need to democratise our local communities. So local government reform won't be enough, but it is a start, and it's a good place to start, and there's things we can do with regard to it. One thing I want to see with regard to local government reform and democratising Dublin is give councillors some real powers, give them something to do. Because I'm in a council 8.5 years, like Keane is, we see councillors up there jumping up all the time around national issues or talking about kind of symbolic things. But we don't give councillors enough real responsibility. Councillors used to, for example, be on health boards. That essentially is gone. There's a talking shop has replaced that. Councillors and councils used to be in charge of waste management and bins. Gone. Private companies running amok across the city and county. Councils used to control water. There's kind of a halfway house in there, as we all know now. Councillors and councils used to have power over housing, and now so much of that power is now being devolved to voluntary bodies and so on, and there are serious questions about accountability in regard to that. Councillors used to have a lot more control over planning, and for example in the city council area now we see the minister threatening to overrule so much of what's been done around high-rise and so on. So give councillors some real serious power, otherwise what is the point of holding local elections? Catherine Murphy rightly says, in Ireland we don't have local government, we merely have local administration. We have people who are rubber stamping. Like they remind me of a school board of management. And that's not good enough. Why are we going to the polls? Why are we operating this kind of front for a democracy? Why not have some real power vested in communities? And the second thing we absolutely need to do is give communities real power. And that's why I want to talk to you about participatory budgeting. The PB, look, it's a bit of a mouthful. We should probably have a better name for it, but it is a very exciting idea. What's that?
I just like the way you say it.
Yeah, it's tough. Like I've been saying it for a while. It's not participative, it's participatory, right? And if anyone can tell me the difference between those, I'll give them a golden star. It began in Porto Alegre in Brazil in 1989, and there's something in the region of about 3,000 of these schemes operating worldwide now. So it's a very much an important process in many other countries, but not yet in Ireland. For example, New York City have a very significant one. I think in about 3/5 of the 51 districts in New York City, there's about $1 million in a pot each where they operate on this. In Scotland, it's very substantial as well. On the continent, cities like Seville, in Buenos Aires, and lots of South America, and indeed across the USA as well. Scotland is an interesting model where they're doing it on a much smaller scale than elsewhere. So that's participatory budgeting internationally. In Ireland, there's been paper commitments to it under the 2012 white paper and putting people first and so on. So where they write in, oh, this would be a great idea, but of course no council has ever gone and done it. In 2013, I proposed as a councillor in South Dublin that we would seek to adopt it. The councillors were very supportive. We got a unanimous motion passed. Nothing was done. Again, when we go back to democratising Dublin, councillors can pass motions, but unless an executive and management really want to go for it, very little will be done. So I kept pushing and trying to get things put through to different committees and so on. And eventually, and because we had some goodwill from our chief executive, in 2017, this year, we got the first ever participatory budgeting scheme run. And some of you will know about it because I don't shut up about it. But it was done in the Lucan electoral area. So local government in Dublin is structured around electoral areas. There's 6 of them in South Dublin, and we chose one out of a hat because we didn't know which one we wanted to pick, so we chose one out of a hat, and it was the Lucan electoral area. And we said we'd give €300,000 to that area to decide for themselves what kind of projects they wanted the council to do on their behalf. So we came up with I proposed a pilot scheme with a cross-party group of councillors, and I think that's really important. We don't let one political party or one political grouping dominate. We get everybody together, and we also had important people from the council management and executive. So there was a steering group that steered the process. Went out to the public and we held some workshops just with general members of the public. I don't know, 150 or so people attended those. We had online submission processes where people could submit their ideas online for what they wanted to see in their neighbourhood. Did they want something done in their local park, on their local street, etc. What we did a little bit of, but not enough of, was went to people who are traditionally left behind certainly by elected politics. So we brought in a primary school, into the council chamber, and work was done with them, and they came up with great ideas, as kids always do. I wanted more to be done. There was some done with older age groups, but more could be done, for example, with people who were disabled, other groups who were traditionally left out. So 160 ideas came into our county council in this process, and lots of them were kind of replications of each other. Some of them were just totally not workable. Some of them were nothing to do with the council. The council couldn't work, for example, on private land. So about 17 or 18 of them were workable, feasible proposals that cost a good bit less. That cost basically €120,000 or less. So we then went to a voting process, and the people in the Lucan electoral area then voted in person. About 300 people voted in person, but most of them, almost 3,000, voted online. So really interesting. Again, we don't really do a lot of this in Ireland. We had our problems with e-voting in the past, but we did an online voting process. And from that, 8 projects were selected. And they are now to be delivered in that Lucan area over the next 8 years. Just to give you an idea of some of the things the people of Lucan came up with, not councillors, not management, but the people came up with, which are being delivered. Christmas lights for Lucan Village, planting native apple trees, small little project for €5,000. A playground in Palmerstown where they felt one was needed, that was a big project. Restoration of an old bridge. Free library book banks, so bring around a little a bank of books for people, etc. Right, there's a few more. I can certainly give you more details on the specific projects that people came up with. And we went then and we reviewed it, and I thought it was really important. So the Institute of Public Administration did a really good review on the whole scheme, and they were very positive towards it. And I have to say the people were very positive towards it. So a study showed, I think 94% of people who replied to the survey wanted the scheme to be run again. So what we're going to try and do in South Dublin now is pick out 2 more electoral areas and do it this year. So 300k have your say, it was called, so we're hoping maybe 300,000 for one more electoral area and another 300,000 for another electoral area. That's what we're doing in South Dublin. Quite exciting, and we're looking forward to progressing that along. Now, that's South Dublin County Council. It's about, I don't know, 1/5 of the whole Dublin population. What are we going to do for the rest of Dublin? Well, Gary, Keane and Paul are all in the councils, and I know they want to see that progress in Fingal and Dublin City. I'm sure we'd like to see it progress in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown as well. What I would like people to get involved with in your table groups is maybe to discuss, is this a good idea? And if you think it is, how would it work? A couple of comments I would have from the process as it worked. We did it on a local electoral area basis rather than the whole of the county council. I think that worked quite well. I think if we did it in the whole of South Dublin, Tallaght would get everything, because Tallaght is the biggest and most cohesive community. So by doing it on a local electoral area basis, you use that principle of subsidiarity to bring it down to the lowest possible level. Something that we might look to do is get our local area reps and our people who are going to stand for councils to have this as part of their election manifesto. And if and when they can get elected, to bring that forward at their own councils, have their own steering groups, and bring in participatory budgeting into the rest of Dublin, and obviously then across the rest of Ireland as well. How do we fund it? Should we have an equitable funding model? At the moment, we just take a portion of the general council budget. If we had a serious, fair local property tax, not the current system, we would have, certainly Dublin would be able to get in more money from that, and we could possibly look at diverting some of that money into much bigger and substantial participatory budgeting schemes. Why is it a good idea? Well, it helps to remove clientelism, and that's really important. Now, we need to be careful with any processes we design around this. So what's the role of councillors? What's the role of people who want to run for election, of candidates? Are they going to get involved in that process? But this can really remove that Gombianism, which has been such a feature in Irish politics over the years. And it can also expand beyond the traditional residents' associations and community groups who are very involved in their communities to those people who aren't as involved, because everyone is equal in this process. And why not expand it? For example, in New York, they let children from 14 years of age and up vote. Why not allow more people to vote? It's not a formal election. So certainly in Lucan, we did have 15, 16, 17-year-olds taking part in the voting process. And again, more excluded groups can be facilitated via their own workshops to put in some good ideas. It can't become the Tesco blue token put in for your favourite community group. And there is a danger of it, and some of the ones that have been done in other countries almost have that pick your favourite football club, pick your favourite group. And so it can't become something like that. So there's a few technicalities around setting it up. I know we're going to talk about it in our table group, so feel free to ask me some questions about that. But we need, I think, with it, start small, do kind of steering groups locally, and hopefully bring it up to be bigger and bigger. If we did have a directly elected mayor, we could have our local ones in each of the local electoral areas every couple of years, and they could have a much wider Dublin participatory budgeting process. We're talking now tens of millions of euro could go to local communities to decide what happens there. So I will be very interested to hear your thoughts on that. I want to finish with a quote that Tony Benn used to use as well, but it's from Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, and he used to say about people and leaders, that the worst leaders, the people fear, and the next worst leaders, the people kind of tolerate, and the kind of good leaders, people like, but the best leaders of all, the people will say, we did it ourselves. Well, we can do it ourselves today. Dublin can do it ourselves. Democracy is a really exciting idea if we can get it right, and we need to have that discussion now. So the ball starts rolling today. And what we're going to try and do is maybe work on some policies as well for the Social Democrats in terms of what we propose for the social democratic model of democratising Dublin. So thanks indeed, everybody.